Hello, guys. Welcome to Monitoring and Evaluation Made Simple. I'm your host, Coach Alexander. I'm so glad you've joined me, and I'm sure you want to know what is the difference between a monitoring and evaluation framework and an M&D plan. So this tutorial is going to tell you all about the M&D framework, and it's going to go into understanding what the M&D plan is. Okay, for those of you here who are here for the first time, I would like to mention that I have two very exciting books which I'm giving out for free. I've got the Logical Framework Analysis, which is a step-by-step guide, and the Monitoring and Evaluation Beginner's Guide, which I want you to download because it's free of charge. It is simplified, and a lot of people who've read it have given me a thumbs up. So please make sure you download that. Then I also have these courses, the baseline survey online course. I want you to use the coupon code to enroll for these courses if you're interested. But I'm telling you, these are very important courses because it helps a lot even as you're doing M&D activities. I also have this survey design online course, okay? So please take advantage of these offers. They are for the benefit of you. And as usual, this is a long video. So I have timestamps in the description below. So if you want to skip a certain topic, you don't want to watch the whole video, just skip to the timestamp and you get to the point where you want to get the content that you're looking for. So the course outline is as follows. We're going to discuss what is an M&D framework, all right? Then we're going to dig deeper. We're going to say how is an M&D framework developed? That's what we're going to discuss, okay, in this tutorial. Then we're going to look at the M&D framework and an M&D plan. What is the difference? Okay, this is something that people ask me a lot sometimes. So what is the difference? If you want to skip straight to this topic, just go to the description, hit the timestamp, and you get the difference instantly. And then you can leave this channel if you want. Then lastly, I'll give you an M&D framework template that you can be using as you're developing your own M&D frameworks in your organization. Okay, so I sure hope you're going to enjoy this tutorial. Let's get started. Okay, so the M&D framework is a framework. Just if you just understand the word framework, it can give you an idea of what we're talking about. It's really a structure that tells you exactly what is to be monitored, what is to be evaluated, what activities need to be monitored, what activities need to be evaluated, okay, in a systematic order, okay. And a lot of times we have these frameworks, but we tend to think of them differently. We don't actually call them frameworks. Sometimes we call them log frames, okay, because sometimes it's difficult to tell the difference between an M&D framework and a log frame. But I want to tell you that actually to develop a M&D framework, you first need to start from the log frame, okay. So it tells us exactly who is responsible for carrying out the M&D activities. When should these activities be done? Okay, how should they be done? What resources are required? Okay, what is the risks in undertaking these activities? So all of these things are covered in an M&D framework. And if you are really keen into learning how to develop this framework, you'll soon realize that it isn't hard at all, especially if the planning was done correctly from the very beginning. And when I say planning, I'm talking about identifying what project you want to implement and identifying what is the problems, identifying what are the solutions, coming up with a log frame, and then coming up with an M&D framework that tells a story. So the M&D framework has three major components, all right? So now keep this in mind. I got some of this content from the United Nations handbook, but I have to tell you that, first of all, let me even tell you this, friends. You know, the UN handbook is a very, very powerful book. It's highly detailed. I would urge you to download it. I'll leave the link in the description on where you can download this UN handbook. But it's a very, very good book, excellently done. Please download that. So it talks about, you have the narrative component that describes how partners will undertake monitoring and evaluation. So when you are talking of the narrative component, we are simply talking about all the writings that you do in the document, all those essays. Okay, I'll call them essays because people sometimes will talk a lot in the document. They'll write a lot of stuff. That's the narrative, okay? So there's even an example of the UN, okay, how they do the writing of this narrative, as you have seen there. So now, you know, the other thing is that you want to look at the narration component as also an opportunity to describe your plan of action, okay? And you see, the whole point is that the reader should understand clearly what this M&D framework is trying to achieve at different levels, okay? So let's say you are an organization and you have different hierarchies. You've got the national office, you've got the sub-regional offices, then you've got the field structures. It will describe everything in every stage of the process of how this monitoring will be done. Okay, so it will explain, you know, the narrative will explain what is actually there, what resources are there, financial, human, time, things like that. Everything is going to be explained in the narration. So I like to think of the narration component as a component where you're just understanding things in greater detail. Okay, you're appreciating things in greater detail so that when you come to the point of looking at the actual M&D framework, you have at least a background that, okay, this is what they were talking about, this is what I should be doing, this is how we're going to achieve the results. So now another part of the framework is the results framework. All right. The results framework, guys, is, as the name suggests, it just simply tells you, it details to you what kind of results is going to be achieved by the project. Okay. So it's really simple, guys. When you look at a results framework, look at it as what this project is really going to achieve at the end of the project. Okay, so those results, the reason why that results framework is that it's supposed to help you fully understand what exactly you're going to be monitoring and evaluating. Then finally, you have the planning matrices for monitoring and evaluation. So this is where now I would say actually the third point is the actual framework itself. Okay. Of course, the M&D framework is a combination of these three components, but I like to think of the M&D framework itself being the third component because there it's going to show you a matrix of all those components which are going to be monitored and evaluated. When are they going to be monitored and evaluated? Who is going to do the monitoring? And what resources are required? What are the risks? So on and so forth. So, as we've been explaining, the thing is that whether you're doing a project, whether you're doing a program, I'm sure by now you know what the difference between these two are, although these two can be used interchangeably sometimes. Like I like to use them interchangeably so that I don't have to confuse myself sometimes. But these are two different things as well. So the thing is that we are saying that the M&D framework will give you the detailed information at different levels of a project or a program. Remember that monitoring and evaluation is done at different levels. So when you talk of monitoring, you're doing it at a level of, let's say, when the project is actually running. Okay, but the evaluation component comes in midway or at the end of the project or at the beginning of the project itself. So there in the project cycle, you have these different times when you need to do monitoring or you need to do evaluation. So in the handbook, which I talked about earlier on, it actually separates monitoring and evaluation because these are two different things done at different times. Okay, but there's no harm in combining the two. There's really no harm because at the end of the day, they are all feeding into one system. So you just need to be mindful of the fact that there are two different things and they need different different levels of attention. Okay, so this is a results framework, guys. As you can see, it is talking about basically the results. Okay, and when we talk about results, we are talking about the outcomes. All right, as you can see on the far left, there's the program outcomes, and these are the short to medium term results that you want to see your project achieve. All right, then you've got the indicators that will measure whether you've actually achieved those results or not. I talk a lot about key performance indicators, guys. Let me tell you the truth. My channel is just flooded with key performance indicators. I talk a lot about it. I talk about how they are developed. I really want you to find time to enroll in my course on key performance indicators. It's highly rated on Udemy. Find time to look at it, digest yourself, indulge yourself in the content so that you become an expert when it comes to developing indicators. The program outputs, the role of partners, everything is there in the results framework. So this is the results framework. It should be in the whole M&D framework, okay, so that it's for ease of understanding and reference. Voila! Sorry about that. I don't know how the hell that happened. Let me go back, okay? So now look here, guys. This is the M&D framework, okay? So now you can see that on the table, it's an example of a planning matrix for monitoring, okay? But actually, this is just the M&D framework itself. So as you can see, there's a bit of results framework inside, there's a bit of log frame inside, but this is really the M&D framework because it tells you what exactly you're monitoring. It tells you who is going to be monitoring, when you're going to be monitoring, how you're going to verify this information, what resources are needed, and what are the risks. So you can clearly see that it's even beautiful to look at because you don't really need to stress yourself in worrying what exactly you'll be doing as an M&D professional in that organization. You don't need to stress yourself because it's all laid out in the plan. It's all laid out in the plan, okay, in this matrix. So now there's something I need to talk about. Surveys. On the onset, I actually gave you a course link deliberately because surveys is a very, 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 very important thing when it comes to undertaking M&E. It's really important. It is through these surveys that you're going to be able to gather data, you're going to be able to analyze that data, you're going to be able to report on that data. So when you report, when you generate those reports, this information, these results you want to measure will be well captured in that survey. So now I have those two courses. Please go back to the links, enroll in those courses. I give you a very detailed understanding on how information should be collected in a timely fashion when it comes to implementing monitoring and evaluation activities. So now, in terms of monitoring, the time or schedule and frequency. When is monitoring done? Let me ask you this question, just out of curiosity. Let me ask you. Okay, guys, monitoring is done throughout, okay, the project cycle. But you can prescribe exactly the timing depending on the resources, depending also on the type of indicator that you're measuring. So in this case, you can look at how they've defined the frequency, especially in point 2. It says progress reviews on achievement or connected outputs will be held jointly in the fourth quarter. 2 field visits will be held prior to the final survey and 3 more afterwards. So you can see there's that timing. Then they also explain who is responsible for these activities. It's so lovely because this makes your life easier. You don't need to be quarreling with anyone on why someone is going in the field to do M&E because it's clearly outlined there. It is well agreed, and this is something I need to tell you guys. When coming up with an M&E framework, which I'll also discuss later in this slide, it's a joint thing. Stakeholders are involved, and there's no surprise. No one should get surprised, and no one should think one person is benefiting more than the other because this has been well agreed by all stakeholders. Okay, so please study this, get to fully understand what this is telling you, and then you'll be on the right track to success. Okay, I showed you that already, so let's go a bit forward now. Okay, so how is an M&D framework developed? This is something now I want you to really reflect and really understand, really get to fully know the stages of how this is done. Okay, so the M&D framework is developed at, guys, let me tell you, that's why I tell my friends, that's why I tell my subscribers, relatives, whoever, that the M&D framework, I mean the log frame, is the heart of M&D. That's what I always tell people. So the first stage is the strategic plan, but really it's not the first stage at all because the first stage is identifying the problem. That is what creates a project. It's first you sitting down with people, finding out where the problem is. Is it lack of water and sanitation? Is it lack of low income levels? Is it high poverty levels in a certain community? What is causing that? So immediately you identify the problem, then you realize that you can actually find solutions. Now, it is at that stage of finding solutions that you develop the activities that now you come up with a log frame. So you have to make reference to the log frame, which gives birth to a results framework, which gives birth to an M&D framework. Okay, so it all has these stages. So when coming up with an M&D framework, you have to involve key stakeholders. They need to be well consulted on, and I've talked about this before. Sometimes it can look expensive to gather people together to discuss these issues, but the long-term benefits far outweigh the cost. And this is what, if you are a manager of a project right now or a coordinator, try to look at the bigger picture. What is this going to do in the long term? Because right now it may look costly, but in the long term, it's going to have groundbreaking benefits, because at the end of the day, you have what you're looking for, a solid ground to justify that why you are receiving support from donors, or if it's not donors, why should you even be doing this project? It's because you have the right information, you have the right systems, and you're using the right people to implement this project. So the project development, I talked about this. It's the problem tree approach. I talk about this a lot even in my courses. I have a course running, the logical framework approach course. I'll leave it the link in the description below. Enroll in that course, you get a full understanding on what I am talking about here. Okay, so what is the difference between an M&D plan and the M&D framework? So now I've noticed that some people tend to, they can't see the difference because sometimes they look the same cosmetically, if I mean, for lack of a better term. But I want to tell you that, guys, these are really different things but similar. I'll give you an example. It's like you have a child. Okay, you have a child who has similar characteristics like the father. But would you say that the father and the child are the same people? You can't say that. So it's similar to this. The M&D plan is the overarching, it's the father of everything to do with M&D in the organization. All right. The M&D plan it documents everything. Okay, it just documents everything in the M&D system. All right, the M&D system for me is the M&D plan in action. It's just systemized, it's running, it's alive. That is what the system is. The plan is documented. It just documents every aspect of the M&D system. All right. So what this is telling you is that the plan itself actually has those different components we've been discussing. So it actually houses the M&D framework. Okay? So for lack of a better term, the M&D framework is the subset of the M&D plan. So you'll find that the plan, you'd actually discover that the plan will be a very big document, like a Bible for some projects, because you have attached in it the log frame, you have attached in it indicator reference sheets, indicator grids, reporting schedules, M&D training plans, the budget, the Gantt chart. Okay, everything is in there. And when you are developing the M&D plan, you don't really need to involve stakeholders actually, because the difficult part has been done. What you're simply doing now with the M&D plan, you're putting things together in a systematic way. You're just simply documenting what that M&D system should really be doing. So now, I would have given you a format of a template of how the M&D plan should look like, but I think I'll develop one in the coming months, I guess. I'll develop one so that maybe you can download it and use it in your own organization. But I want to assure you that as you go about developing the M&D plan, look at it as a reference point for any officer or specialist or coordinator or manager responsible for M&D who can read that document and immediately understand how M&D should be running in their organizations. Okay? So I hope that is clear for you. That is what the M&D plan. So the M&D plan is the documented part of the system. It just documents everything. The M&D framework is the subset of the plan. So these are kind of different but similar. Okay, so please take note of those aspects I talked about. Okay, so actually that's not the M&D plan template. Sorry guys, it's the M&D framework template. Okay, so what you're supposed to be doing right now is when you want to come up with an M&D framework, just simply use the layout which has been exhibited here. So you start with the expected results, the indicators, the M&D data collection methods, time schedule, responsibilities, means of verification, resources, and risks. Once you do that, then you're home and dry. Okay? Okay. So thank you very much for attending this short tutorial. I really enjoyed having you here with me. You can get in touch with me at this the email address that I've laid out there. And if you want, you can also use Skype. Thank you very much and see you on